You know, I was never one for scholarly pursuits growing up, you know. I always thought that school was boring and a waste of time. It was dumb. And I hated the idea of college so much that I eventually decided somewhere around like middle school that I was just not going to pursue it at all in any capacity. You see, I warmed up to the idea of slumming it, you know, doing grunt work for a big part of my life very quickly because my old plan has always been just, you know, slum it for as long as I need to, get myself some land, try to make it sustainable, and just try to like min-max my expenses and whatnot, but that's getting a little bit off topic for this video. Basically put, all that you need to know is that education was never my forte. I really don't need no education if you understand my meaning, and I very quickly decided on this whenever I was in school. You know, they would used to go around and they would say, well, what college do you want to go to? And I think I actually might have told this story at one point. Maybe I haven't, but they went up to me whenever I was in like middle school. I was in like 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, and they said, well, you have to write down something for what college you want to go to. I didn't know any colleges except the one that was just down the road about a couple of hours, and I wrote that down because that's where my mom went, and I got criticized for it even though they just said write something down, and I didn't actually want to go to that college. You know, I never understood the entire college craze, and anytime that people would ask me what I wanted to do whenever I, you know, grew up or whenever I got out of school, it was always either whenever I was like a kid, these pipe dreams like, well, I want to make video games, which every kid says that. It's a little bit more difficult, you know, when you actually get down to brass tacks. I've tried it. Don't know if that's my forte. Don't know if that's my calling in life. But whenever I got older, whenever I was like a teenager and whenever I got into high school, I would very bluntly tell people, they would say, well, what do you want to do when you get out of high school? And I would say, well, I want to dig ditches until I'm in one. Of course, that implies that I wanted to dig ditches until I was dead. And I'm just telling you, I'm still pretty much on that boat. I mean, it is very fun. In my opinion, it is just incredibly relaxing to just get in a hole with a shovel and just go at it for 8 hours a day. And I mean, I actually did have a job doing that at one point, but that's a story for a later time period. You know, it was the strangest thing. No one believed me, and I think it's primarily because they didn't know that I had the autism, because I would say maybe my fascination with it, my obsession with it was maybe brought on a little bit by this, you know. Maybe it was brought on a little bit by it. But I mean, like, one of the things I used to do a lot whenever I was a kid is I would always go outside. They would tell me to go outside because, you know, that's how parents are, especially if they're boomers, all right? My parents are very old, so they would tell me to go outside, quit playing the video, all right? And I would go outside, and I wouldn't be able to talk to the neighbor kids because they were weirdos. Another story for another time. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to go ride a bike? Well, I didn't know how to ride a bike for a very long time when I was a kid. Well, am I going to go walk down the street? Well, I couldn't, you know, overbearing protective parents. So I just grabbed a shovel and I picked a spot of the yard and I started digging a hole. And I mean, I remember specifically there was this one hole I was digging on for a couple of summers. It was pretty fun. It was a pretty deep hole. I could like stand in it and it would, you know, be about half my size. Now, keep in mind, this was whenever I was like 10, 11, so probably not as deep as I remember it being. But nonetheless, I would keep finding stuff in there. You know, we were right next to railroad tracks, so I found a couple of railroad spikes in there. I found a couple of old spark plugs. I think I found an old Pepsi can in there. Might not be remembering that detail properly. I remember something else was that I was digging in the same yard, and I thought I found a couple of teeth. And I think there might have been just a dead animal there. It definitely didn't look like a human tooth, you know, way too sharp. I digress. I mean, you just find a lot of cool stuff whenever you're digging holes. And whenever I was digging holes in my yard, I kept finding cool stuff. It's a fun, simple hobby. It calms me down. And I still find myself thinking about, like, when things get too stressful, when things get too overbearing, whenever I'm out here in, you know, whatever scenario I'm in, I either think, well, I would like to go driving around, or I think, man, what I wouldn't give to just be out in the middle of the woods with a shovel, digging myself a trench, you know? That was something else entirely, too, is that I was always obsessed with, like, trenches. Whenever I found out about, like, trench warfare, World War I, etc., it was a very strange moment because I thought, well, you know, I understand the horrors of war. I understand that World War I would have been an awful place to be. I understand that it would have been a big threat to me and my personal safety, but those trenches, my man, I understand you're living in mud and blood and whatnot, but like, I would have at least wanted to see the trenches. I'm going to go ahead and pin that on the autism though, you know? Wanting to be in some sort of like life-threatening, life or death scenario purely because there's like a trench there. Yes, that's definitely the developmental deficiency on my end. I will make no bones about it there. So that means you can't make fun of me for it. If there's one thing that the internet has told me, you can't hold that one against me. I'm getting off topic. That was a joke, mind you. I don't know if I'm, being overt about that or not. But no, what I'm trying to say is ditch digging is like a love of mine. It's a hobby of mine. It's zen. It's something relaxing. And no one would believe me whenever I was in school. None of the students, none of the teachers. And like it carried on for a very long time because people would look at me and they would ask, well, what do you want to do when you get out of school? And, I'm not going to toot my own horn, any of that. I'm one of those, like, I was one of those kids that people thought, well, you're going to go do great things. I'm like, well, great things are dumb, I'm like, why would I want to do any of that stuff? People would, like, tell me, it's like, well, you're cutting yourself short here, or you're, whatever phrase it was. And I said, well, buddy, I'm just like, I don't want to live one of those lives where I'm going to have to be, like, doing a lot of big stuff, I enjoy slum. I like my privacy is what I'm trying to say. And ditch digging, well, I mean, it's a very private profession. But like I said, no one believed me, and it got to the point that we actually had to do a presentation one time. We had to do a presentation in an agriculture class that I didn't even want to be in, to be frank with you. But we had to do a presentation on what we were going to do after high school, and I actually still have this presentation. So what I did, everyone else was doing like slideshows and whatnot. I made a video. The video had to be, or the presentation had to be, mind you, about 2 minutes long. So I made a video. It's called Ditch Digging Explained in 2 Minutes. And I think it should just speak for itself. Basically, the gist that we had to do, though, was that we had to say exactly what we wanted to do when we got out of high school. We needed to provide 3 examples of the practical usage of it. Then after that, we had to ask someone who was in that profession how they enjoyed their work. And we had to ask them 5 questions. But here's the thing. I couldn't find any ditch diggers, so I was the one voicing the person who was asked by it. So, fair warning there. Here is the video that I turned in my, I think it was my junior year of school. Ditch digging. The act of digging a ditch. Easy to do, hard to perfect. More commonly referred to as a skill than a career, there are many viable professions which fall under this umbrella term. Our journey begins at the end. The graveyard. A field of people past their due date, all resting 6 feet deep in their own personal hole. Grave digging, while a relatively straightforward profession, does come with its downsides. If you're a superstitious person, being surrounded by the hypothetical ghosts normally associated with cemeteries may push you away. Or, if you're easily depressed by the idea of death, you may want to seek employment elsewhere, for obvious reasons. Be warned though, if you take this job you'll have your work cut out for you. People are dying to get in. While trench warfare is a style of combat that's been ignored in more recent years, there's probably still at least one encampment in the Third World which uses it. The obvious challenge and risk of this job would be digging a trench while being assaulted with a barrage of bullets. If you don't mind loud noises and getting shot at, hopping on a plane and seeking employment from a Ugandan warlord may be your best bet. If not, civilian work may be a better idea. When it rains, it pours, and when it pours, it floods. To navigate this fact of life, runoff ditches are dug. Normally dug on the sides of roads, the bottoms of hills, or the edges of parking lots, runoff ditches allow people to keep going when the going gets tough. A challenge of this job is actually finding one. With the already abundant amount of runoff ditches, you'd be hard-pressed to find work that hasn't already been done. However, if you can find a prime location for a ditch that needs to be dug, and you want to help your community prevent flooding, consider a job in runoff ditch digging. To help get a better understanding of a normal day in the life of a ditch digger, I asked a ditch digger what his life was like. What do you do? I dig ditches. Where? Wherever I'm told. When? Usually around 9 to 5 on weekdays. Is it hard work? Sometimes. So, do you have any good stories about ditch digging? No, not really. It's a very boring job most of the time, but, it pays the bills. Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? Everyone loved that. Everyone thought I was joking, but no, I was completely and totally serious, completely and totally legitimate about my love for digging ditches, and wouldn't you know it, it was one of those Tumblr moments, everyone clapped. I got a round of applause out of that video, and can you really blame them? I mean, come on. This is my magnum opus, alright? This is my great feat right here. This is the one thing that probably is going to be written down on my tombstone. Here lies Keezer, all right? Autismo Supreme Ditch Digger from Kentucky. And I mean, that's just it. That's just it. That's really all that I've got to say right now on this. This was one profession that I wanted to be whenever I was a kid, and it's still something that interests me immensely. It is one of the fine and simple joys in life. And honestly, like I said, I will pin probably the majority of my interest in it on the autism, but you know, it don't matter. None of this matters. So yeah, like I said, I did actually have a job digging ditches whenever I was like right out of high school, but that is in and of itself a story for another time, because you know, the reality and the fantasy of digging ditches are two very different, very separate things. So I'm gonna cut the video off here. I think I've rambled on long enough about my hopes and dreams as a child, and I think that I'm going to leave you till next time. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, I upload daily. Why not check out some of my other content? Why not like, why not subscribe? Helps me out. Get those numbers up a little bit for me. Don't actually have to watch the videos if you don't want to. Just get those numbers up. If you'd like, check out my Twitter. It's twitter.com/Hale_Keys, where I post art on there from time to time, as well as a couple of shit posts that I think are funny. Aside from that, here's the end of the video. I've been Keezer. I've never been good at outros. I'll see you next time.